Atheist.org had a paper on it. I mean, I don't know if it's still there. It looked like it was a little bit older anyways. So they're probably just going to leave it up. And the paper was written by a guy named Frank Zindler, the president of American Atheist. And this paper is full of issues he has with the Gospels. And the paper is a scholarly, in my opinion, a scholarly embarrassment. The website should be ashamed of themselves for even posting this thing. It is so bad. Zindler claims that Jesus never even existed. And that Paul invented a fictional Jesus, and that the Gospels were written based on Paul's invention. So Paul went about preaching a fictional character, and the Gospels drew from Paul to make the Gospels. That's his claim. But obviously his biases played a role in this, because almost nobody in the world has ever denied Jesus' life. And especially when you just read what we just read with multiple historians referencing Jesus and his family members and his crucifixion and the guys who crucified him. Pretty insane to just look at, like, if you just take an unbiased view of history, like, maybe you'd say, well, people don't resurrect from the dead, so maybe I don't believe that. But certainly there was a Jesus, because you've got multiple historians and multiple eyewitnesses saying so. And a mass group of Christians growing out of this, starting from people who followed Jesus in his lifetime. So, kind of crazy to me. Obviously, Zindler has biases. He's the president of American Atheist. Obviously, this is a biased paper. And obviously, you're going to see some nonsense here. Yeah, he's gone through some dates. Yeah, I watched one of his debates. And
people like to beat him. Do they challenge him on?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because he's really got no leg to stand on. I'd say there was always one myth circulating that the story of Jesus was like a story that came out of some Roman. What was it? It was a Roman, a Greek god that they said paralleled the story of Jesus, and they'd say, well, they were both the Son of God, and it's like, no. The Greek God was the Son God, S-U-N, and Jesus was the S-O-N, Son of God. Like, they had 12 comparisons of Jesus and this Greek God, and one of them was the Son of God. It's like, no, he was the Son God, S-U-N, like, not even the same word. So if you want to talk about the embarrassment of this level of scholarship, I mean, like, it's silly. And when you really get into it, it's just people spreading misinformation just to share their bias, and, like, I respect an atheist who's going to come and debate someone with honest historical information. And if they take an honest view of history and say, hey, I don't believe Jesus was resurrected, I don't believe in God, and they have actual reasons and an honest view of history and an honest interpretation, and they just say, I don't believe it, I'd be like, I respect that. We agree to disagree. But a guy like Zindler, who's just going to be completely dishonest and blatantly spread lies and spread things that are obviously not true, and to just disregard the actual use of historical information and the way that we ought to go about reading and using historical information, it's an embarrassment. One issue that I'll present in this paper, just to show how silly this is, Zindler claims there's an inaccuracy in the gospel where the location of where Jesus landed when he ran into the maniac of Gadara. So Jesus crosses the sea and lands the boat, and there's that guy who was chained up, breaking chains, and crazy man who he delivered the legion of demons out of. Okay, that's what we're talking about. One gospel says Gerasa, the other says Gadara, and actually in different interpretations you might even get the words kind of like framed a different way even. So. But is it Gerasa or Gadara? He's like, look, it's a geographical issue. Gadasa and Gadara. And he says this invalidates, the gospel. And when I read that, I said, how much do you want to bet if I look on a map that is the same exact place on a map? So what did I do? I hop on Google. Classic old, just simple Google search. And I find a map. So here's the issue. Is it the Gadarenes or Gerasenes? Gerasenes? Or get Matthew, Gadarenes, Mark, and Luke, Gerasenes. So Gadara or Gerasa. Okay. It says Eanes because the country of, it's the people, right? The people of the Gadara, the people of Gerasa. So I say, let's hop on a map, and I just bet that it's the same piece of land. All right, there's the Sea of Galilee. Jesus crosses from one side to the other, right? So he's coming from here, and he's crossing to the other side. So he's going to end up somewhere on this side, all right? Well, here's Gadara. Here's Gerasa. And if they're across from where Jesus was leaving from, and you draw a line, they're all in a perfect line. They sailed to the coastline of Gadara and Gerasa, which are the same piece of coastland, across from exactly where Jesus left, in an exact perfect line between these 3 points. He landed at the same piece of coastline of two countries that are right at the same point. I mean, they line up to a pinpoint exactly where they say. What happened was Matthew's talking to Jews. The Jews know more about Gadara. Mark and Luke are talking to Romans. The Romans know Gerasa better. So they're referring to the province or state that their audience would know. But either way, it is literally pointing to the exact same piece of coastline. And this is what I'm saying with this biased scholarship. The guy reads 2 different words and doesn't even look at a map to see if they're different places. It's the same exact place. So Jesus lands the boat at the country, near the country of Gadara or country of Gerasa, same exact landing place. I mean, you couldn't even line it up any better. It's a perfect straight line. So again, like you said, people just believe this stuff. Like, don't just believe what people say. Look at it. It took me 5 minutes to find this map. And then I go, wow, what a silly fellow to actually publish this in a paper and to share this information with people when a 5-minute Google search to find a map shows that the guy is insane. Right? Like, embarrassing of Zindler, an absolute embarrassment. And his paper's riddled with this stuff. I mean, 90% of the time, all I had to do was read what he was referencing and read it in context, go to the beginning or end of the chapter, or just read the verse before or after it, and it completely contradicts what he's saying. And so what he's relying on is people who have never read the Bible just to believe what he said at face value and not actually look into it. Another example, right next to his paper is 15 Bible contradictions, and I think that he actually wrote this one too. But you get some similar stuff. He goes, oh, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. And then he says, but then the New Testament says, one man esteems one day above another, another esteems every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. So he goes, well, the Bible contradicts itself. Look at that. What do you guys think the answer for that is? Well, he says, should you keep it holy or esteem every day alike? Which one is it? That's the contradiction. Well, the point he's saying is you have to remember the Sabbath day, but then Romans says you don't have to remember the Sabbath day, right? So keep the Sabbath, don't keep the Sabbath. Which one is it? What do you guys think?
Well, what he doesn't understand, too, is that we're under a new covenant now, too.
Right.
And we realize that the Sabbath was actually fulfilled in Jesus. Jesus is our rest.
Yeah, so, fulfilled in Jesus.
We don't necessarily. It's the only of the 10 Commandments that's not reiterated in the New Testament.
Right. So different testaments, for one, written to different audiences, thousands of years apart. Who was Exodus written to?
Hebrews.
Right, the Jewish people. So this was Jews keep the Sabbath. This was non-Jewish people, Romans, who never were given the law. I mean, this specifically says this is for Israel. This law is for Israel. These are not Israelites. This isn't even written to Israelites. It's written to Romans. So you can't look at it like a book of rules and laws that was written for everybody, everywhere, every time. It's a book. It's a book that was written over thousands of years with different target audiences at different times and places. That was for Jews. This was for Roman people. Two different audiences, right? Right, but now it's Sunday too. And another time, Paul actually has other statements like this where he's saying, it's not about the Sabbath day, it's about Christ. And to each his own, in a way, he basically says, in other words, you had some Romans not practicing a Saturday Sabbath, and Paul's saying, hey, that's okay. Like we want to worship on Sundays, that's the resurrection day, that's okay, because guess what? The Saturday wasn't given to Gentile people. They don't have to follow a Saturday because it wasn't for them. It was never given to them. God never commanded any non-Jewish person to practice a Saturday Sabbath.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is some of the conflict between the Saturday and the Sunday Sabbath, whereas, it was originally on a Saturday, but now Christ resurrected on a Sunday, so now we observe it on a Sunday, and so
technically, Christians are not placed under any Sabbath at all. Technically, right. In the New Testament, we do it as a good practice.
Yeah.
But it's not even mandated of Christians. But we still do it because we recognize it as the right thing to do. It was a good principle, and we keep it in principle. But it's not even a mandate. Basically, just that article was picking on the permanence of earth from Ecclesiastes compared to the Peter. Ecclesiastes said the earth is going to abide forever, while Peter said the earth is going to die. And it's like the Ecclesiastes passage is. It's an allegory. The generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. That's not a scientific point. It's an allegory. Take the genre of Ecclesiastes. It's poetic. It's a poetic statement. It's talking about the shortness of life. It's saying life is short, in a rather poetic way. But it's not meant to say that the earth not gonna just stay forever. That's not what Ecclesiastes was about. It's wisdom literature. It's not scientific literature trying to tell you how long the earth is going to last, right? So it's genre, and so again, it's just people taking the Bible for something it's not understanding what they're reading. So this was a nice chart. The Bible contradictions are resolved by knowing Greek and Hebrew, studying the socio-cultural context, author's rationale, theological points, but almost always it's just reading in context.